Hey, Build Show Network. Steve Basic Architect here. And we're continuing to talk about windows today. And we jumped outside here because there's a bunch of things happening outside here that I think are worth noting. You see, we have the window installed here. Notice that the installers put the blocks there to basically keep the window from falling out of the opening. So once they know where that dimension is, they can plumb up those blocks and basically have them set. So pushing the window up against them not only protects the window from falling out or the chance that it falls out onto the ground and smashes, but it also sets the proper dimension for the displacement of the window inside that rough opening. A few things that we talked about from the prior videos. Notice here's our stretch tape sill. Notice that it stretches and it conforms to the full corner here, so that it gets to conform nice and tight inside that corner and basically get pulled down here and stretch. And then we have our jam liners that come down the side here and basically turn the corner and go in. And remember from our earlier videos, we actually took the zip, and while we have zip R9 here, we just took and lined the rough openings with a 7/16" zip. So we get that full turn in on our weather resistive barrier / primary air barrier. And now our windows are going to pretty much take over that task between this face of the weather resistive barrier and this face of the weather resistive barrier / air barrier. Notice also a lot of the things from our previous videos have now come together. You can see the little blocks here that we set the windows down. You can see that there is a space underneath there. So it's a fully managed water installation. If any water gets in, it's going to find an edge, it's going to come down, and it's basically going to run out. And this will be all integrated into our rain screen system. Notice that the blocks are held out of the corner here, so any water that comes down the jam doesn't get pushed in by the block. It's actually allowed to get into the pan, and because of that positive slope, they slope outward here. Also, notice Schuco does a really good job protecting. They put on their protective tape that we will pull off, when it's time. But notice here, we talked about this a little earlier in one of the videos where we talked about the weep system. So a weep system is just the water management system relief of the window unit itself. So should any water get into the window sash here, it's going to find its way to the lowest point, which is where this weep hole is, and it's basically going to drain out into the system. Now, the one thing you need to be concerned about when you're detailing windows and putting in the windowsill is these come in different locations per window manufacturer. So you can see these are relatively high. They actually come with a weep hood, and you can see in the weep hood, it actually has a hole in the back, and then it has the full bottom is open. So that weep hood pretty much just goes in here and snaps in and finishes the window. Now, the important thing to understand here is because of that location, we have to have our windowsill come up and be underneath that weep hood so that if any water comes down, we pretty much drain it on top of the sill and it'll just run off. I have had some windows that have the weep holes down lower, and all that means is that we would put the sill up a little higher so that the weep hole there would then weep into the drainage space below the sill, finished sill, and hence down into the rain screen system. But these will just pop right off there. So anyways, let's go back to the studio. Again, you can break out some details, some drawings, and we'll wrap up these window installs.
All right, everybody. So we talked about getting the windows ordered. We talked about getting those windows installed. We took that look at the sill detail, the jam detail. We just stepped outside and talked about one of those windows as they are installed and the weep holes and all the good stuff that comes along. I got the head detail here. We're going to wrap up this little mini series about windows. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And got Big Red in hand. Got the head detail on the table. So let's get after it.
All right, everybody. So
we looked at the sill detail, we looked at the jam detail, right? Sill, we looked at the jam detail. Now, let's take a quick peek at the head detail. Now, I know in the video we were outside, we were talking down at the sill, weep holes, and all of that. But like I said in the intro there, I'm trying to make this a whole kind of full complement of installing windows and how we get there. So it's a little bit of a piecemeal where, you know, you have to put some things together, but hence, let's get going and let's talk about the head detail. So, very similar to the jam detail, we have our head plate here. And the head plate is nothing more than what it sounds like. It falls underneath the header. It goes all the way from the inside face to the outside face of our sheathing. Here you can see we have our Zip R9 that we're using on the project. Here is our header, and that, depending on the window, is 1-ply, 2-ply, or could potentially be a 3-ply. And what that does, by holding it tight to the outside, that gives me a dimension here that you might have heard me call it a header pocket. And the header pocket allows me to insulate the inside face of that header at the same time we're insulating all of the other cavity walls. So it really makes it easy on the insulator that they get to do what they do when they're doing it, and there's no special order of sequence or operation there. Very similar to the jam detail, notice that we also have a 7/16 inch piece of zip there, and this one, you know, like we called the jam liner, we'll call this the headliner, and not that that's the leader of the concert liner, right? But it is the headliner. So basically, again, when you have that opening in a window, we want to make sure, right, that we're maintaining continuity. So this is outside looking in. This is the wall here, and that's the jam and sill, and then this is the head, right? We want to make sure that that air barrier is turning in on the jams and folding under on the head. So that way there, we're installing the window, which is our air barrier component in the rough opening, right? You know, people always associate, what's your air barrier? Oh, it's the membrane. Well, it depends on where you are in the house, because it could be the piece of glass, it could be the window frame. There's a bunch of things happening there. But in this case here, the window component is, in fact, our air barrier, and then we have to make this connection across there. And like we did in the jams, we can use some expanding foam, but then we also have our primary air barrier here with the tape, and this one here is our secondary, right? Remember, Joe's belt and suspenders. Now that goes out, we'll actually tape that corner and seal that up. This also, again, just like it does on the jam, it helps protect that 1.5-inch face of polyiso there, right? So that basically closes it off. We tape that off, we get a nice sealed condition. That's a warranted condition by Huber Engineered Woods, the maker of Zip. And then, so we turn that corner, and then we'll put in our window, we'll put in our head casing, and notice we'll have a little piece here that it's just our little metal cap flashing, has a little lip there, and we'll just basically tape that off at the zip. But the idea is anything that is coming down here through our rain screen system, and you can see it called out there, right? That's going to come down, it's going to go over this. It is not going to have the ability to go inside. It is forced to go out, and it has a little edge, and then basically drip. What's our favorite 2 words for water management? Down and out, right? So we get that. We maintain continuity here of our air barrier. There, we have our thermal properties here. So pretty much everything that we get concerned about with the control layers, I know I waited till the last video to talk about control layers, but basically our air barrier and our water management is fully taken care of. And those are the 2 biggest concerns with installing the window. I mean, the thermal management of a window is handled by the makers of the IGU there, and the frame fabricators out at Schuco to provide some air and get us some decent U values in that system. But basically, that's everything that's happening at the head casing. And we also have our tape there, just like we did on the sides. We just don't tape that sill closed so that we have some release and some water management in the system there. So yeah, there you have it. That is the last of the window videos, at least for this project. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Yeah. All right. Well, like they say, all good things must come to an end. So until next time, we're going to put in windows again. I'm sure we'll take another look at it from another angle. But that's a little 4-part mini-series where we talked about installing the windows. We looked at all of my details for that particular job and installing the windows. So hopefully that was all a little helpful. And if you're still looking for more, Build Show Network's got literally hundreds of videos. So go check them out. If you're looking for more from me, you can find me, Steve Baczek Architect, on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, putting up a whole bunch of stuff there. So go check it out. And then lastly, if you really want some fun, Unbuild It Podcast. Yeah, my good friends Jake Brew and Peter Yost. We team up. We talk about everything building. Sometimes it's as simple as we're answering questions that people email in. So anyways, we are worldwide. Yeah, we're international with that, believe it or not. I was actually surprised when I looked at where we are, but we are all over with that. So anyways, go check it out. It's on all the audio channels. You can find us out on YouTube too, Unbuild It Podcast. So until next time, I'm Steve Baczek. This is Big Red. Long live our buildings.